My Time at Evershine is Pathea's most ambitious game yet. But it's already run into controversy, between the community's concerns about the game's new direction to questions about current development. This game is shaping up to be the team's riskiest project yet. We're gonna cover all of the hiccups that have happened even before the Kickstarter went live. So we're gonna be talking about accusation of AI usage, the impact of the early access being cancelled, worries about the change in art style and gameplay, community concerns over the recent alpha, and overall my thoughts about all of this as someone who adores Pathea Games' previous titles, Sandrock and Portia. Hello you gorgeous human being, it's Miss Bubbles. If you're excited for My Time at Evershine and you want to be updated about everything concerning this game, consider squishing the like and subscribe buttons because I will be covering it for you. Before the team even launched the Kickstarter, Pathea Games received backlash from gamers and artists and was accused of using Gen AI to create the upcoming game's key art. In this My Time at Sandrock Reddit thread, where we see screen captures from the Discord, we find a response from Zed, who is in charge of the studio's art, and Yang, who I believe is the technical leader. Yang clarified that all artwork is primarily handcrafted by the studio's artists, and he mentioned that they incorporate AI tools in some details improvement, but the core of the creative process is driven by human artistry. He expanded to say that AI is a tool that supports the team. It's not a replacement for the craftsmanship and creativity that go into every detail. So they want to combine the best of both worlds, using technology to improve productivity while ensuring that the final visuals reflect the unique and thoughtful work of their team. So Pathea Games shared this GIF where it gives us a glimpse about the creation process and how the art was sketched. Then we see a response from Zed, who was shocked by the accusations because he was, in his words, on a long flight to visit a partner company, and he had a surprised Pikachu face after landing and realizing the claims. He confirmed officially and categorically that they never used any Gen AI assets in any of their games, including Evershine, because even if one AI asset gets found, they would have to take the game off the Steam store. I believe back then when this happened, that was the case, but now Steam asks you to officially state at the end of your store page if you are using Gen AI. Zed also mentioned that their artists are fundamentally against using AI to create art, but they use Gen AI images like other screenshots, photos, and art pieces simply as a reference. Moving to the main artwork, he checked in with the lead concept artist who clarified that he did use AI to create some wrinkles and make the hair more pronounced, but that's it, and he was adamant that he painted every single asset. He then mentions that Yang had panicked when the initial accusations happened, and this is why he jumped the gun with his response. Zed added that there is no malicious intent and he does not feel like he did anything wrong that warrants an apology. The team are and will continue to be transparent. Zed also introduced the lead concept artist who worked on all of the 3 My Time games and shared that the entire team has improved tremendously over the years, which we have definitely seen. The games have looked night and day difference from Portia to Sandrock and now Evershine. He also responded to a Discord post saying that as artists, many assume if it's not design and just natural type of texture, it's fine to use AI tools, but the team is going to have a sit down and talk about the do's and don'ts in more detail. And you know, since 2024, when this incident happened till now, we see people quickly throwing accusations that developers are using Gen AI to create their core art and the core concepts. We even saw Tales of Seikyu recently go through this. They got accused of using Gen AI, with many people sharing so-called evidence that, look, surely like this is Gen AI, I have proof, I have evidence, only for us to learn that no, the developers did the art themselves. They even showed sketches and showed the process of creating their characters to prove that the accusations were false. This has become an issue where developers receive backlash and everything is seen as Gen AI made rather than human made. And this is a double-edged sword. While it's good that a lot of people are now more aware about Gen AI and they are more like, you know what, no, I don't want that in my games, stay away, and don't lay off employees because you are replacing them with bots. This is good, people are more aware of this, but it's also a little bit concerning because developers are falsely being accused of using Gen AI when it's far from the truth. So in the case of Evershine, and even recently with Baldur's Gate 3 and Clair Obscur, which lost its Game of the Year award, there's this blur between understanding the use of AI as a tool to assist human creators versus using Gen AI to completely replace humans. Distinguishing the two is important. Using AI tools to allow developers to refine their ideas is one thing, but replacing human creativity altogether is a separate thing. Especially when the games industry, like many others, has seen layoffs because of AI, which has been frustrating to see. And funny enough, even though Evershine has proven like, no, this is not, Gen AI created, we just use a tool to create the textures. I was looking at one of the recent statements from the game and someone was just like, this is AI slop. And yeah, it seems like the accusations are still going on. So as you can see, the start of Evershine's development was already off to a controversial start. But let's move to a current big division between the community, which revolves around Evershine's new art and gameplay direction. In the previous games, you play as a builder who moved to Portia or Sandrock, depending on which game you're playing, and you have this gameplay loop of gathering resources, mining, which has its own twist in both games. I love mining in those games. And then you acquire blueprints and you use a crap ton of machines to build. Both games are story-driven and rich in lore, which is also going to expand to Evershine. And we can both agree that these games are also very well known for their memorable characters who are also voice acted, especially when you think about the romanceable NPCs and the fun minigames that we enjoy with them, and overall the engaging dating system. And this is where you're gonna quickly notice that the characters are very quirky with their design. The games are in 3D, they're not pixelated, and the characters look pretty unique. Some people dislike the art style, especially in Portia, while others, including myself, love it for its quirkiness. With Evershine, we see the biggest step up in the art direction. Characters look vastly different, and based on what we've seen so far, I think they look incredible. The new art direction also makes sense considering that the team has improved over the years. In update number 32 on Kickstarter, Yang explained that the new art style began as a little test. By stretching character proportions and adding more details, the team discovered something amazing. He says, "So here we are, new body proportions as well as a more realistic style. We think the overall quality upgrade will give core fans something fresh while also attracting new players." Early on, some feedback expressed worry that we'd lose fun designs and diversity and become more generic. That was a concern for us too, but after our artists adjusted to the new style and started pushing the envelope, we're currently satisfied with our direction. While the team is happy with this direction, the community is a little bit divided on this. For example, this Reddit user wrote that they feel like we're losing a lot of the charm and identity of the previous two games. And in that same thread, you're gonna see fans just going back and forth. Some really love the new art style because the characters look more mature, and this is something that we struggle with in farming games. Adult characters look like children, even though they are actually adults in the game, and usually the elderly resemble adulthood the most in a cast. But apart from the characters looking more like adults now, some fans prefer the previous art style because it felt more whimsical. And I've seen this division in a lot of the conversations that we've had, be it on streams or in my YouTube short and YouTube dedicated video when I first talked about Evershine, but also every single time that I mentioned the game. This Reddit discussion caught my attention. It's titled, "I don't like how my time at Evershine looks." And it's funny to see someone commented, "Damn, the game isn't even finished yet, and people have to find things to complain about." They changed it because a lot of people disliked how cartoony it looked. Many people like the anime style, though it's far from looking like anime yet. Because you see, in the initial comment, the person who said they don't like this new art style, they said that Evershine looks like an anime, art style. And someone circles back to that anime comment as well, and they said, "People call everything that isn't cartoony anime style. I've been into anime for 33 years and this is just a more realistic style. I wouldn't call it anime and I don't want to have another game in that style. And apart from saying that the art style looks like an anime art style, I've seen so many people say that Evershine looks like a Pathea clone. I'm very happy with Evershine's new direction, and I resonate with the commenters who are just getting annoyed because they see the same thing happening over and over again. Like, for example, anything that's pixelated is now called a Stardew Valley clone. Anything where you decorate your island is an Animal Crossing ripoff, and anything now that, you know, looks like Evershine is either called a Pathea or a Genshin Impact clone. And there's another thing that I wonder how frustrating it's going to be to developers, which I see a lot in long-living franchises. You're going to see that if the developers listen to fans and make changes, you'll find people bashing the new game and wishing that the old essence would come back. But if the developers try their best to keep that old essence, people will complain and say that they crave something new and they're just getting tired of the same old essence. And I bet you're already thinking of some franchises where you've seen this discord just carry on year after year. Another point of contention is the gameplay loop itself. In Evershine, you play as the governor. I don't know if you know this, but Pathea Games was initially working on Project Me, which was a mobile-based gacha game. But with development, they shifted the game to be reminiscent of their previous titles, so now we have My Time at Evershine. And so they decided to keep the essence of collecting characters while still letting the storyline and side quests introduce settlers across the land. So that gives you, the player, some agency. Core romanceable characters are introduced through the main story, and you also have 20 other key characters. These core characters have the main character arc, but you're also going to encounter random NPCs with unique traits, and that's what's going to make every playthrough feel different. A shot for every time I said character. In Evershine, your job is going to be building up the infrastructure, recruiting settlers, taming the wilds, and building up your own settlement into a town. Along the way, you can build friendships, go on adventures, carry responsibility, and maybe find romance. And if you played the previous games, you're already seeing and hearing how different both of these gameplay loops are. My Time at Portia and Sandrock versus Evershine. It is vastly different. Heck, you even have a list of followers that will come along with you in Evershine, and the scope of the world seems to be even more in-depth than Sandrock. So the developers had to introduce features like climbing and gliding for you to traverse the world. You're so much more hands-on here. You're governing the settlement, you are in charge of everything, plus you're still going on the adventure, you're still collecting resources, you're fighting the enemies, you're finding love, and it can feel like, oh my god, this is a lot to handle. And this is something that the developers have come across in the alpha test, which we're gonna talk about. Despite these changes, Yang said that the story is still the king here. Pathea Games wanted to replicate what they did in Sandrock, where the characters have an issue at the start, and then through the narrative, they overcome them. And considering the goal in Evershine is to gather people and bring them to your settlement, some stories will be dark, so the game might move from PG to PG-10 or even 13 without any cussing. The devs also learned from the mistake they did in Sandrock, where, you know, the story feels like it's dragging at some points, so lengthwise, Evershine will be shorter, and it's going to be closer to that of Portia's length, which is, you guessed it, another topic that fans are not agreeing on. Some are disappointed for the shorter length of the story, while others prefer it. I think as long as the gameplay is fun and engaging, and you know, the story quests are entertaining, I'll be satisfied. I just hate having, you know, annoying added fluff or boring fetch quests like the ones we see in games like Tales of the Shire. Now let's go back to the Kickstarter and talk about why the devs ended up canceling early access, which it can be a good thing, but also maybe a bad thing. They crushed their Kickstarter goals, which was $200,000. They ended up raising over $2.9 million, which is insane. But also, if you played Portia and Sandrock, you're gonna understand why there's so much faith in Pathea Games on delivering. According to the devs, Sandrock cost them $12 million to make, so they expect Evershine to be around that ballpark. The stretch goals were ticked off one by one, reaching the one that stated that Pathea Games will cancel early access if that goal was met. The Kickstarter update number 43 shows us that due to backers' support, they were able to skip early access and focus entirely on delivering the full game. Yang mentioned that while early access can provide valuable resources and funding, it often slows things down because of tight deadlines for early access builds. Skipping it means they can fully focus on polishing the game at their own pace, ensuring a smoother development process and a higher quality final product. And they'll still rely on valuable feedback from the alpha backers to help shape the game. This way, they can address issues early and fine-tune features for the best possible experience. I think early access is a double-edged sword. A lot of people who are new to these games think that the games were always this incredible. I hate to burst your bubble, but they were not anything like the games that we have right now in terms of the polish and how fun they are. They had to go through so many changes through early access, and this is how you get the games that you have. In fact, I have a before you buy for my time at Sandrock when it first released into early access, and you can see me say, I am so in love with this game, but I show you so many issues that I had to deal with. Also, I'm not sure if y'all remember, but the multiplayer initially was a complete disaster. Games like Sandrock show you that farming RPGs don't have to be copy-pasted formulas with no additions to break the repetitive mold. With that said, getting rid of the early access is a bit concerning, even though the backers' feedback is taken into consideration in the alpha, but I wonder how flushed out their full release is gonna be, especially when we see the negative feedback that the alpha has received so far. On October 24th, 2025, the alpha test was released. That was several months later than the initial promise of early QA of 2025. Backers were getting frustrated at that stage. We even see the Steam post from July 31, which was showing the disappointment. Alas, in September 2025, before the alpha test went live, the developers came forward and shared the problems that they were dealing with. You see, the gameplay loop had a conflicting aspect of part of it being an RPG where you as the player go into the fields, versus the strategy part where you as the player are supposed to also stay in that base. The devs said the RPG part wanted the player to do things in linear fashion, while the strategy part wanted the player to have more freedom. And this meant that the story was also contradicting itself and dealing too much with the seller's stats, like hunger was becoming cumbersome. Nobody wanted to care about Ragnar being hungry again for the 6th time. It was a mess. So the developers took the decision to spend more time tweaking the main gameplay loop until they were satisfied, rather than sticking to the main loop that they had and hoping that the conflict will miraculously solve itself down the road. Which I think is an excellent choice. It's very beautiful to see that the developers had to humble themselves and say, you know what, while this is the dream game that we wanted, it's just not working, so let's change it. They even discussed maybe going back to the initial loop where the player is a builder, but eventually they decided, you know what, this is the 3rd game, they really want to bring something new to the table. So they simplified the strategy part and tilted the game more towards open world exploration RPG, which is music to my ears. I adore open world RPGs, and I think it's a really good choice what they're doing. They're really taking in the player feedback, but also before they even got there, they're testing the game out and they're being like, you know what, this is not working, let's fix it. So with the new changes, that meant that the story was tweaked a bit as well, which meant that some characters become more important, while others had their role diminished, and the twists in the story have also changed. And we can see that the community was really applauding the developers for their transparency, and they were really excited about the new overall direction. Which takes us to October 2025, when the alpha was out, and now we have the feedback. And we had 2 different concerns. One had to do with the build just having so many points that weren't gelling, and then we also had some issues with the NDA. Let's start with the build, which Pathea Games has addressed, and I applaud them because they're taking full accountability, and once again, they're being open to the changes, so the full game is successful. On March 19th, 2026, we see this devlog where we learned that while the next alpha update was entering its final stages, and the devs really want to move the series from simply running your workshop to building an entire town, they saw that more changes had to be made. They wanted you to be the strategist behind the desk, but also the warrior on the front lines. They emphasized that nearly half of the entire Area 1 map includes more than 20 functional buildings. These are not decorative. They are meaningful tools that you add to your daily rhythm. And when you look at the world overall, it looks pretty big with lots of attention to detail. And with that, they had to also reconsider the gameplay loop. So instead of being a builder with a mountain of commissions and sawdust, you are now managing an entire community, and you're gonna see the town blossom right in front of your eyes, which sounds amazing. So you can expect things like, in their words, simple little tents transform into cozy wooden houses, and those houses slowly growing into proud, stone-built landmarks that feel like they've always belonged. So what happened with the alpha? There was a clash between the ideal and the reality. Backers were disappointed with a lot of things, and while it's very important to remember that an alpha state is not what the final game is going to look like, it's really good that these concerns are being tackled before the game fully goes out. I'd rather see them address these issues sooner than later. So the devs said that the two major areas that need work are the building experience and the NPC interaction. First, buildings were just popping up into existence after submitting materials, and this is immersion breaking. Not having a sense of progress defied what the devs wanted. Do you remember how they said they want you to see the town grow right before your eyes? Yeah, buildings popping up, that's not it. Second, when NPCs arrive, they just go straight into work mode with no interactions. This is again immersion breaking. You know, instead of utilizing their personalities and their traits and stories, they actually feel like a task bot. And this is the exact opposite of what Pathea Games wants. And third, we have big problems with the building placement. The system is just imprecise, and it was very frustrating to organize your layouts. As such, they had a tough call to make, which is, as much as they wanted you to completely build the town brick by brick, it is seeming to be very difficult to implement. So instead of tying you down with repetitive hammering, they want you to focus on the overall growth of the town. This will give you more time to plan your layout, hunt for more resources, push the story forward, or even enjoy dates with your favorite NPCs. They emphasize that construction in the final build will feel like a real process, so it's gonna take steps of approving building requests, prepping materials, and you're gonna watch the project unfold in stages. They also made the construction time faster. Not only that, but they also changed the camera mode to top-down view when entering build mode, and they're bringing back the grid system, and you have the ability to swap between free mode for creative or go with the flow building. And you have the grid mode for players who just want every fence, every flower bed, you know, every storefront to be perfectly aligned. And they're looking into recommended layouts. They also plan to give the town specialists a proper introduction and welcome gift when they move into the settlement. Who knows, maybe they're going to display the gift that you give them in their home. And your governor mansion will be expanded, so it's going to make the process of decorating a lot easier for you. At the end of the day, they said that the ultimate goal is in the end game. You're going to represent your town in alliance meetings, you're going head-to-head with other settlements, and you have a new ranking system. Without even playing the alpha myself, just reading about the changes, it makes sense, and I'm like, okay, it's good that they're going to do all of this, because you see, the My Time games are so good at the gameplay loop that they have. This is why you will log in, you will say, you know what, I'm just gonna play 1 hour, and you end up playing for 5. But I am a bit worried about, again, not having an early access stage anymore to give player feedback, because Pathea in their past 2 games have thrived on the community feedback. So I wonder how many gameplay tests will be enough to finally release the game and not be stuck with fixing everything after the release, which is something that we see so many games struggle with these days. They will put out the full release, but come back to the game 1 to 2 years later, there's been such big major updates and changes. You're like, it's not even the same game anymore, you know? This could have been an early access. And just like the difference in opinion about the art style, a lot of people are not happy with how much more responsibility you have. They don't want to be a governor. I've seen this this on my previous Evershine videos, but we also see it in this discussion here. It's part of the March devlog, and we see this user express that they're disappointed with this decision. So I wonder, what do you think? Are you excited to be a governor, or do you just prefer to be a builder? Okay, hold up a minute. We just got the April devlog updating us on Pathea's work. We can see that they've adjusted some of the characters' faces just a little bit so that they can balance what players liked in the older art style while still embracing their new direction. The team seems so excited because they can better capture the characters' emotions and expressions, which is also going to be awesome for us while we play Evershine's story and we see these characters react to whatever plot twists Pathea has prepared for us. They also ironed out issues that popped up with the character's hair during the Kickstarter demo, so they've now built hair cards from scratch. They note that this took them quite a lot of time to do, which is understandable because hair is so difficult to deal with in games. That's why we always see issues with them. And this naturally meant that they had to spend a lot of their budget on this. They also added the ability for us to fully customize our body. This is something that they've avoided doing in previous games because they said it takes a ton of work. They're also working on the dynamic weather, making, in their words, the mood in the settlement is going to shift from dark, gloomy overcast to blue skies that glimmer in the reflections of the rushing rivers. This is so exciting to see. As I mentioned in the video so far, I admire Pathea Games for being open to player feedback, and these changes are amazing. I'm happy that they're communicating more often, and I hope that they maintain this. But I also forgot to mention when I filmed this video initially, a very crucial thing that I'm so worried about. And let me know if I'm the only one worried about this. While Portia and Sandrock took some time to be optimized properly on PC, they eventually ran pretty well, and I have no issues running them on my computer. However, their Switch ports have been abysmal, to say the least. Portia ran like a slideshow on my Switch OLED, while Sandrock suffers from so much pop-in and stuttering that it makes me genuinely feel like I want to vomit. This is something that I talk about in my recent video where I go over farming games everybody loves but I hate. And in that video, I talk about how much I love Sandrock and Portia, but I cannot stand their Switch ports. I'm gonna leave the video for you right below the like button if you want to check it out. So I really hope that they seek support with Evershine's optimization, that they don't rush it, and they make use of the Switch 2's capabilities. As for the Switch OLED, I have no idea if Evershine is gonna be capable of running on there because most games just run like a mess on the Switch OLED, but fingers crossed regardless that they're gonna take their time with these ports and do the Switch community justice. Now let's talk about the NDA and why it's also another issue that I see being brought up. If you don't know, an NDA is a non-disclosure agreement. This is legally binding and many Kickstarters and in general early game tests implement these days. Depending on the clauses inside the NDA, there's going to be a list of things that you can and cannot mention publicly. This can be things like specific gameplay mechanics, story segments, characters, etc. Some NDAs have an expiry date, while others can be legally binding with no expiration date. So the backers who are testing the alpha signed an NDA, and we can see some discussions about whether this was a good idea or shady behavior. Under this Steam announcement for the alpha playtest, this user stated that NDAs are not normal, they are a choice by developers and they are used mainly in fear of bad press. While another user said an NDA is not unusual and it's a good thing for both the players and the developers. This user states that the developers have changed and added many new gameplay features, so having a closed and controlled alpha test group is better than having to deal with 100 different opinions. And I've seen similar posts before where some say that an NDA is shady while others think it is necessary. I agree that an NDA can be a good idea in some cases, especially when a game is undergoing so many changes. So considering this is not an early access, it just keeps the feedback controlled. But I also see why an NDA can also be a problem because once the game goes live, there might be so much, contradictory feedback and people would be like, we didn't know about the problems, why didn't no one tell us about this, we wish we knew. But regardless, I always say check different reviews and gameplay videos just to make sure that when the game is out, you can see if this is going to be the game for you or it's gonna be a skip. And so we reach the big question. When is Evershine releasing? The devs are aiming for a 2026 release. I wish I can tell you this is going to be doable or not because, I did not try the alpha. I have no idea how much is already available. I've seen some people say that the alpha is going great. Others are saying it's not. And again, when we have these NDAs, the only thing that we can know for sure is what the devs are openly sharing with the public. However, if we look back at Portia, it was in early access for a year, whereas Sandrock was in early access for around a year and 5 months. Considering that Evershine is even bigger than Sandrock in terms of the world, but it's similar in story length to Portia, a part of me thinks like surely it needs to have had an early access equivalent available for maybe a year and a half, so that they can make it in time for the release this year. Regardless, I'd rather see a delay than a mess, because again, even the multiplayer for Sandrock was initially disastrous. So in an ideal world, I just want us to avoid seeing similar huge problems with Evershine's release. But I gotta say, from experience, I trust Pathea Games because they always seem to listen to the community. They really care about their games, they pour so much love and effort into them. And when I see a struggle with a game like Evershine, I feel a lot more at peace than when I think about a game like Witchbrook. If you don't know, this game has so many problems. It's been in development hell, and I talk a lot about it in this video that I would highly encourage you to check it out. Thank you to my YouTube and Patreon bubblies for making videos like this possible, and a shout out goes to the Game Dimension, Jake Logan, Grey Wolf, Emmy, Stella, Charming Kara, Faye, Fufe, and Andrew for going the extra mile. Until next time, stay bubbly.